How's it going, people? Sam and Slabber here. And this, well, I don't even know what to call this. Basically, I was just wandering through the forums as I was leveling up the nub, doing a bit of thieving, and, well, I come across this post. It's in, I think it's the recent updates forum section, whatever the hell you want to call it. Yeah, recent updates. The title of it is Level 120 Capes, My Thoughts. So, after reading through this, well, basically, he's talking about, well, this drum gunner is, which the name is familiar to me, but I've no idea why. I'm sure a lot of you will be like, what the fuck, Salmon? But, yeah, whatever. Anyway, what he's talking about is kind of the end game stuff in Runescape. And kind of what needs to be added, what's there at the moment, and starts going on about a few other things and what like brings people to RuneScape, that kind of stuff. Anywho, this is an interesting read, so I thought I'd tell you about it and then maybe have a little bit of a chat. Because, well, I've personally been playing MMOs for, well, fucking ages, let's be honest. Diablo 2, Conquer, well, RuneScape itself actually was one of the first ones I think I played. Well, a proper, I suppose, proper MMO, other than Conquer. There was another one, I can't remember what the hell it was. It was, LOE 2, something like that. Ah, that's old, really old, awesome game. If I can remember the name of it, I probably have a little gander to see if it still actually exists. I did play EverQuest for a bit, Final Fantasy 11, well, 14 I've played as well. I did play WoW for a little bit, Perfect World, Neverwinter, Vindictus. Basically I've just played a bollock ton of them, I can't even name them all. Anyway, that list will go on for ages. So I think, kind of, I can understand where he's coming from here personally, and I might be able to add a few things in, so I figured this might be a little bit interesting to listen to, so I thought, why not, you know what I mean? It's Tuesday, patch notes still end up at the moment, so yeah, I'm just doing this in my spare time, because why not, you know what I mean? So let's get into it then. Right, reading from his post, I'd like to tell you all a little something about the endgame of RuneScape versus the endgame of other MMOs, and why no update should be released that would make it even easier to obtain a level 120 skill cape to cater to those who currently have a problem with the time it takes to actually obtain one. Alright, so let's look at the endgame of other MMOs first. Common endgame activities in most other MMOs is PvP. This could come in open world PvP in PVM areas. You always have to look over your shoulder while farming items from monsters in these areas. It makes it more unpredictable and more fun. There's also other forms of PvP, such as arena and battleground kind of things. With the right mechanics, this makes it very enjoyable long-term endgame content. Raid-wise, if an MMO has raids in it, then this will likely be the primary endgame content. Keep in mind that raids versus, say, Virago is something entirely different. You fight through much larger areas, encounter several bosses on the way to the final boss, with each boss dropping a wide range of items, mostly, in the case of other MMOs, tend to be kind of class specific. The carrot that kind of keeps people going is the fact that they are rare awesome items which can only drop from certain bosses, which of course also have a low drop rate. Usually such an item is part of a set, which means you'll have to obtain the other items to make the full set up, as well as to make the most use out of them. This means you'll probably spend quite a bit of hours trying to actually obtain all said items, and he does say personally it's not his type of endgame, but you can see why people like it and why it is kind of like a substantial part of endgame in most MMOs. There's a bunch of other stuff that also falls under the endgame category, such as skill tree level ups, veteran levels, getting married, buying houses, and etc, depending on the game you're playing on. Okay, so now that part's out of the way, you might wonder why most of these things are considered as endgame. What if you finally get that awesome gear set for your class? Are you going to PVM with it? Of course you are. At least for a while, maybe. But the purpose won't be to get better gear, because, well, you already own the best gear possible. Most of these MMOs then tend to have like PvP fights and rewards, which include PvP specific gear, and it outclasses the best PVM gear, etc., so you'll be using it temporarily at best until you get better PvP gear. Now at this point, most people either quit and move on to the next game, continue with the character to play other endgame activities that the game actually has to offer, or they simply start a new character or a different class or something along those lines that they can start from scratch and deck it out again. However, this still doesn't give enough of an answer as to why people bother doing all this. Obviously they like the game, and they've come this far, but what drives them to go for that awesome gear set, max skill levels, etc, etc? Well, two things really. Challenge and bragging rights. He says, I feel personally the challenge is the weaker drive of the two, but bragging rights cannot exist without it. Basic example, Armaguard dude, I finally finished buying buckets, I got 10k of them. Nice. Armaguard dude, I finally finished buying buckets, I've now got 10 billion of them, what the fuck? So that kind of thing is why I think the personal achievement is kind of a terrible argument against it. You're playing an MMO, which is a massive multiplayer online game, and surely you will tell some of your mates about every time you've achieved a certain goal you've set for yourself, that kind of thing. You wouldn't do this if all you care about is your own opinion. Challenge and bragging rights create competition, competition creates motivation, and being motivated to play means the game is serving its purpose. Right then, now we can finally look at what RuneScape has to offer as endgame content, and which part challenge and bragging rights play into it. RuneScape has a large number of minigames that can be played for fun. Some of these used to be played by a fair share of people, which made them competitive, such as Castle Wars and Soul Wars, just to name a couple. However, EOC severely cut down the amount of people actually playing these minigames, and the introduction of 07scape also gave those people an easy way out and to not even bother learn how to handle EOC, and simply leave the EOC section. It split up the community, which obviously is a bad thing for the game. And additionally, it also killed off a part of RuneScape which could be considered as endgame, which additionally is a bad thing. Especially since RuneScape lacks endgame content such as proper PvM and PvP activities, such as open world PvP or raids, from the earlier examples. So what does RuneScape actually have to offer then in terms of endgame content nowadays? Well, sadly, not too much. In fact, the only endgame content that remains alive and kicking for the most part is the goal of max XP, the 200 mil max. Simply maxing out has become easier and easier over the years, and PvM pretty much comes down to doing it purely for the sake of obtaining money. And which purpose does money actually have in endgame, since you already have all of the best gear anyway? Well, honestly, not a lot. Basically to buy a good looking cosmetic outfit, or to train buyables with, since the cosmetic bit is done fairly easily and is even a part of the training buyables bit with 120 capes as well now. The endgame of RuneScape all boils down to one thing: gain XP. And you know what? That's perfectly fine, no problem at all. But this does mean that you have to preserve this endgame very carefully though, because the game would turn into a fluke otherwise and would become pointless to even start playing it. In my opinion, Jagex has not preserved the endgame at all in the last few years, which is why I've created this thread and why I'm going into such detail. In addition to these level 120 capes, is a great thing as it corresponds with almost everything, such as the trim comp cape, that this game actually has to offer after you finally max out. But it is very important to keep in mind that the challenge and bragging rights of this game is time related. This means that if you decide to update the best XP per hour method to train a skill, you must do it moderately, and this is where Jagex have simply just straight up dropped the ball. In fact, they've dropped it so often that it appears that it is required for me to point the following things out to you all. This is stuff like you go from the max hunting XP used to be red chins, which got a roughly around 140k hunting XP an hour. Yeah, fair enough, no problem at all. That came out when Hunter came out, so yeah, whatever. Then they brought out Herbal Habitat and Draconic Jadingos, which instantly banged it up to 300k XP an hour, which is over double in a single update. And it's not like it went from like 30k to 60k an hour. This is an extra 160k XP an hour. It's not a small amount. Also, the fact that they brought effigies into the game at all, in any shape and form, and the fact that they dropped every 30 minutes at a consistent rate, which gave you the Dragon King lamp plus 90k plus XP in different random skills, when there are skills in the game that are literally 60k XP at most an hour. Allowing people to get up to 360k mining XP in 15 minutes a day, whilst the fastest mining XP an hour in the game is 10 times lower than that. And we thought this was bad at the time. Here's some more recent examples for you. Allow people to get 3.5 million herb XP an hour and maybe 8 mil summoning XP an hour during a double XP weekend. Allow people to stock up on as many bonds in their bank space possible for Squeal of Fortune promotion weekends where they've got bonus stuff coming. allow the Wheel of Fortune to have such an enormous impact on gaming XP in general, allowing Silverhawk boots to exist, but if that's not enough, to actually activate them while training any skill whatsoever as well. Developing an item that is similar to the Silverhawk boots ever again. Having a Wheel of Fortune promotion weekend that turns every single star or lamp into a prismatic item and make it give a chunky boost on top of what I would regularly give. And so lastly, you cannot release a ton of updates that boost XP per hour so that it becomes easier for the casuals to obtain 120k as well. Why not? Because the end game. Challenge and bragging rights on this game are solely based on the time spent playing. Make a skill faster to train equals it takes less time to reach 120, which makes the cape become less special, and the only motivation to play the game pretty much vanishes. Then people get bored and people quit. I certainly hope that you get it now, and I also certainly hope that Jagex has a better idea on what to focus on now. Oh, and just to be sure, yeah, you should focus on releasing more endgame content, or bring in previous endgame content back to life whilst preserving the value of the challenge and bragging rights on this game. Not on the stuff like Elf City, because from the looks of the polls, that's going to make the game even easier yet again, while all it does is replace one repetitive grinding area with a new one. And yeah, fair enough, it's great seeing a nice, pretty, flashy new area to actually level up in, but that also wears off pretty quickly. And then you're left with a better XP rate there, and everything is nice and easy. The game has already suffered greatly from slip-ups in the past and has tainted the top of the high scores beyond repair already, but perhaps it's not too late when it comes to the complete end of RuneScape. If you take these steps, if you release XP boost updates with extreme thought and caution, if you put a max XP per day cap on some skills during double XP weekends, for example, if you put a max amount cap on bonds that you can store within your bank or on your person, if you greatly and permanently reduce the influence a treasure hunter has on XP gain, and if these thoughts do not fit into IVP's agenda, then perhaps they made a bad investment and should consider selling RuneScape to a group of people that actually understand. And last but not least, after reading 30 pages worth of posts, here's a few things I'll clarify a bit further. First of all, you should forget about my XP reputation, whatever. I'm just a gamer who happens to like RS and has played several other MMOs at max level. I have enough knowledge on the subject to formulate an accurate description on the matter. My viewpoint is this. Why would anyone play RS instead of other MMOs? That question should lead you directly towards the answers. For some people, it may be the subscription fee or the free-to-play related stuff. For some people, it'll be about if the end game is good or present, etc. This is why you should disregard RS stats when thinking about this. We're all equal, we all have a choice. Now then, what I'm trying to say with the intro of my thread is that RS should never try to become a WoW-esque game, because it can never compete with the game's strengths like raids, etc. because of a few things. The game engine, for one, allows their servers to handle content like raids, a huge open world, and high-end graphics. You can't say high-end graphics with WoW, mate. That's just terrible. Right, I'm cutting that bit out. No high-end graphics. WoW has not got high-end graphics. Fuck no. That's like, no. Just no. It anyway makes the game more appealing. The second one, there's tons of games just like it already, with the only difference being subscription or free-to-play microtransaction models related. In other words, there's plenty of games like it out there for just about every casual player of any shape and form. And now the problem which ultimately sets RS apart from the other MMOs. Time is not the currency on those MMOs. They tend to focus more on pure fun for the player, and competition comes from PvP alone, ultimately, since the PvE aspect ends when you reach the best in slot gear. Microtransactions work for those game models because you pay for the sake of fun. And why do they struggle to maintain their player base? Right, because it becomes the same old story rather quickly, and everything that you can aim for in those games tends to have a very easily reachable best in slot moments. Does this mean that RS is doomed? Not at all, but it does limit the options when it comes to preserving this game in the long run. RS does have the longevity factor which other MMO RPGs actually lack. Time is the currency for everything you achieve here. Yes, literally everything. Which instantly means that microtransactions which are XP related do not work for this game because the only purpose equals saving time to train a skill. Microtransactions purely for the sake of saving time in a game where competition and achievements equals the time spent to actually level up, will lead to the permanent demise of the game itself. The reason why I say permanent is because people will quit faster, move on to another game. They'll also then tell their friends and other random people that talk about RuneScape or ask about RuneScape that this was the state of the game when I left, and they also won't come back. Because of RS not preserving or updating its unique aspects which made people play this game in the first place. In short, it gives the game a bad reputation, and that is exactly why RS struggles to draw in new players now. I let people know on those other MMOs that I play RS at the same time, and generally the reaction is something along the lines of, why the hell do you play that, it's a bad game, lol. RuneScape is also a popular choice on mockery threads at other gaming forums. Sadly, why do you think they have this opinion? There's only one way forward. Start focusing on the strong points of the game, preserve them, and stop contradicting it with huge XP boosts and microtransactions. Stop trying to turn RS into something that can only be inferior at best. Examples on RuneScape's strong points. The quests in RuneScape are pretty much unique compared to other MMOs. Minigames such as Castle Wars and Soul Wars, the concept might not be unique, however they are unique in the sense of the way they feel and the way they actually play out, which sets it apart from other kind of capture the flag systems in other MMOs. There's way more non-combat skills to train, specific time setting which could be expanded upon further. Developing more updates involving these points will create positive feedback. Positive feedback will reach other gamers. Those gamers may be inclined to return, or new players may be inclined to actually try it out before negative feedback reaches them, which basically makes them turn away. So yeah, I just spent like 17 minutes telling you about this post, well, literally reading it out to you, but it should give you a pretty good idea on what he's trying to actually say. Basically, the fact that there is no end game as such, you can say, compared to other MMOs out in the market. I mean, the end game in RuneScape, personally for me, and I'm sure many of you have probably already seen this, basically the end game is, well, you get your 99 in one level, in one stat even. So you get your 99, that's like, you've just entered basic, the beginning of end game, I guess you could call it. And then you go into like the true end game, which is you get a max cape. Happy days, you're now at the end of the game pretty much. You've now got all your skills up to 99. Good work. Well, the things to aim for then is comp, which isn't that far away from max cape. If I'm totally honest, there's not a lot of achievements needed to get the comp compared to max. You basically need 120 dungeoneering and then a bunch of fanning about for a couple of hours. Easy enough. And then you got trim comp, which is, well, besides Castle Wars, doesn't really take all that long. But if you decide sometime early on in your RS playtime that you're going to do one Castle Wars a day, then that'll knock out a large chunk of it by the time you actually get around to comping and going for trim. So, fair enough, not all that bad. But what's after that? Well, you've got getting the best gear in the game. Which, fair enough, you join up with a bunch of people, get in a clan or something, maybe call up a couple of mates, go in there, stab some shit in the face, get all the best items, job done. You now got all the best gear in the game. The other thing to do is just buy random cosmetic stuff, or random little goals, like own every rare, for example. Something along those lines. Other than that, you've then got the 120 keeps which they brought out now, which, fair enough, that's now end-game content, pretty much. So 120 mil in every skill will get you that. Give you a nice little pretty cape for the 120 in that skill. The only other thing left then is get 200 mil in each skill. Now, fair enough, getting the 120 for the 120 skill capes, that's not a bad little goal, neither is the 200 mil XP. Though depending on who you ask, it may or may not appeal to them at all. I mean, personally, the thought of actually getting up to 200 mil XP is just, no, I wouldn't want to. It just seems immensely boring to me. I don't gain anything from it other than I got 200 mil in this. What do I do now? At least getting the 120? Possibly. But I wouldn't aim for it as a goal, because you don't gain anything extra from it other than a pretty looking cape. I mean, it's a nice little kind of passive thing. I'll go around stabbing shit in the face, go bossing or something, get 120 mil in combat, which would be magic, for example, and if I get the 104 mil requirement, then job done. I've got a nice little pretty cape, whatever. It's nothing I'm going to aim for. For other endgame content, I mean, fair enough, getting max and comp and stuff will take you a while, but it was... God, there was a series on YouTube ages and ages ago. I can't remember his name for the life of me. There was a bloke who did his max cape from scratch ages ago. And he got his max cape with, well, just within a year, and then trimmed it not long after. It was like 20 days after, something like that. And that was all from scratch. No money, no nothing. And yeah, within basically a year and a month, he had pretty much done the endgame content for the most part. The only thing left was literally 200 million every skill, which is a bit of a bonkers endgame aim for the most part, let's be honest. It is quite mental. I mean, it will take you ages, fair enough, but if you like that kind of thing, then you like that kind of thing, it's going to appeal to you. But other than that, 200 mil XP aim at the end, there's not a lot going on. I mean, reading through this, the PvP stuff, I assume he's getting this from maybe playing WoW in the past. I haven't actually played WoW a massive extent. I literally downloaded it when you had the offer on to play for free for like 30 days. You didn't have to buy the game or anything. And I played it for about 2 days and then wanted to stab myself and just completely uninstalled it. I couldn't stand the game. It looked horrible and no, didn't suit me at all. Not my type of game. I just don't like the games with like that stupid little quest system where it's just retard mode. It's like, yeah, go to this bloke, right, fair enough, I gotta kill 20 rabbits. Good job. Kill 20 rabbits, you go back to the bloke, kill another 20 rabbits. But this time you're getting some other special item. Nah, I'm alright, mate. I'd rather just randomly walk around, see something interesting, and rip it apart with daggers. You know? But I have played a lot of games, so I do... Well, I've got quite a lot of references, to be totally honest. Endgame-wise. I mean, you go all the way back and you've got like Diablo. Fair enough. Endgame, you can't really call it Endgame because it wasn't like a proper MMO, I guess. You can't really call it a proper one. But even then, you had hunting the gear, just getting the gear alone, because the way the gear system worked, it took quite a lot of work. I mean, random stats on it, and then the fact that it's gotta be, was it purple? I think the purple was the rarest one. Fuck, I don't know, it's been way too long since I played that game. But yeah, you go for like the uber rare gear, and then you've got to get the right stats on it, ideally for whatever you're looking for, and that alone will take you some long ass time. But that's one version of it. I mean, RuneScape, fair enough. Endgame wise, yeah, you can go to Virago and you can go get your best mage gear, you can go down to the Rise of the Six, get the best melee gear, you can get the shields whilst you're at it, good times. And then you go with the Ascensions and you can get the Ascension crossbows. Fair enough. But then, there's no variations with the items themselves, so once you've got it, you've got it. I've had this, I can't remember if I actually put this video up, but I did record a video ages ago, God, what the hell was it called? I've no idea, I was talking nonsense anyway. You know, same old, that's what you come to expect from me. But, yeah, it was setting out a plan for the... like a weapon system, like an upgrading weapon, like a Notorious Monsters. I swear to God I posted it. I called it Notorious Monsters or something. I chucked it on the forums as well. I can't remember if I chucked up a video for it. But in there, I literally go into like making variations on weapons just to make things a little bit more interesting. It doesn't need to be anything major. The system I had, I'll just completely ignore that entirely and just add something now. What I mean by adding stuff is... well, like what they said with the Inventor skill, and what they was talking about at RuneFest, when they was talking about sorting out the smithing skill, where basically they're going to take smithing and change it a little bit, mix it in with a bit of Inventor, and you basically take like 4 steel daggers, and you combine them into one, and it makes a steel dagger +1, which, let's say a steel dagger's accuracy is 100, then a +1 would be 120 accuracy, for example. So it's a little bit of a bonus, but it works across the range with all weapons. Fair enough, that's one kind of variation. At least that helps, because you'd actually have to go back into Virago multiple times to keep farming seismic wands, so you could make them into +1, +2, +3, +4, +5, up to whatever the limit is. And doing that adds a lot of endgame. I mean, you can go to Virago and maybe you go there once and you absolutely luck out and you get it First time, job done, you got a seismic wand, run away, don't have to go there, unless you want the orb, like. But let's say you get both in one, uber luck, good times. You no longer have to go to Virago. You have his drops. I mean, yeah, you can go there for fun and shits and giggles or whatever, but hunting for the, like, best item in slot is now complete. You have the best mage weapons in slot. There's nothing else to compete with it. So adding variations like that comes in handy, quite nice. You can add the smith in, good times. They could add another skill entirely like they're doing with the inventor. I'm not sure if it's going to work this way, probably not. But the skill could give you something like augmentations in gear. Now this is going to get a bit more complicated, simply because what I mean by augmentations is adding actual stats to actual drops. I went into this in the Notorious Monsters video, and basically what I meant in that was basically this, some super monsters will appear in different places, different spawn reasons that you probably never even heard of in Runescape before, or maybe ever seen in a game. But loads of different spawn reasons, like one Notorious Monster might spawn after like 7 hours, and it'll spawn every 7 hours on the dot, no matter what. And then you might have another one which will only spawn if you kill like a random amount of monsters. And it could be anything from like you kill 20 black dragons to kill 2,000 black dragons, and this NM can spawn, Notorious Monster can spawn. And it's like a super version of the black dragon, and it'll rip your face off. But if you kill it, it drops like an abyssal whip. But it'll be an abyssal whip plus 2 straight off the bat, and on top of that it would have additional crit rate and slightly quicker attack speed, or something along those lines. And then you could have another one where you keep killing QBD, and eventually, as you kill QBD, maybe she drops like a special little parts of keys, for example. You go in there loads and loads of times. It's a really rare item. You need 4 of them. You combine the 4 together, and you can enter like a super QBD fight. And the super QBD fight will drop like a super dragon kite shield. But the dragon kite shield from the super QBD fight would be kind of monstrous. It'd be like a +5, so it'd have monstrous stats compared to usual, and then maybe it absorbs part of any damage taken as HP and actually heals you on hit. Something like that. Just little tiny variations to all gear across the board. I mean, you can do it with the Notorious Monster system, like I mentioned, but it could be implemented into the game in other ways, such as just simply making another skill with augments, or adding an NPC. I mean, you don't even need to add a skill for it. What you could do is, for example, let's say you go to, I'm going to use Virago again, you've now got a seismic wand in your hand. Good times. You've now got like 30 seismic wands in your hands, and you've just smithed them into a seismic wand +5. Even better times. So you've now got a +5 seismic wand in your hand. You go to this NPC, and let's say, for example, you want to add an augment to it that can occasionally hold them in place on a basic magic attack. So, you know, quite handy for mages, let's be honest. If you're fighting against anything with melee, it holds them away from you, which means you don't get beat on. Good times. So let's say you want to add that. Well, fair enough, this NPC goes, yeah, right, no problem, buddy, but it'll cost you. And instead of just costing you like 1 billion coin, because I mean, money is not hard to come by in RuneScape, so in order to not make it like a rich man's game, I guess is the best way to put it, you now need to get drops from specific monsters, or on a special hunt list, kind of similar to Slayer, I guess you could say, but it could be brand new items you've never even heard of. Just let's call them keys for now. You go to collect 200 keys, that's what you've got to do. And to collect these 200 keys, you have to kill QBD with level 20 armor and at most a level 40 weapon. You cannot use anti-fire, and you've got to kill it, I say 100 times. And that'll be one achievement got for the requirement to add stuff to your seismic wand +5. Meh. Could be key drops from it, or you could do it in a system like you go to QBD, you have like armor and weapon restrictions, or you can't use ultimates, that kind of thing. You can't use abilities at all. Something along those lines, just something to make it a bit difficult. And that kind of takes off stage 1, and the stage 1 boost on the seismic 1 plus 5 could just add 20 accuracy. But let's say there's like 30 trials to go through. So there's 30 mini upgrades you can do to your seismic 1 plus 5 before it's Uber Rape Wand plus 27. Just little things. Doesn't need to be massive. And I'm sure they can do it because at the moment you've got the road trip from May thing going on right now. And that uses the book to kind of track what you're doing. Although it does seem to be fairly simple, I gotta be honest. I mean, it is only like a completed dungeon unit floor with complexity 6. Sit down for a minute. But in order for those things to happen, the game needs to monitor what you are doing personally to actually make those things work. So if they could expand on that slightly, so we could actually monitor these trials, let's call them trials, to upgrade your weapons or augment your weapons, then it should be feasible to actually add it in-game. And if you do something like that, it should add some nice endgame stuff in there. Which, well, just for the collection of gear side alone, that would add quite a lot to endgame. I mean, a lot of people really, really, really love bossing. Others really love to skill and go for the 200 mil max XP Uber mode. I mean, two completely different sets of people. I mean, some just like to stab stuff in the face. Others just really want that XP for the brag right kind of thing. But that, for the PVMers at least, would give them a bollock ton of stuff to do. Like, a monstrous amount. I mean, think about it. The fact is, to do all that, you're going to need some high-level smithing and maybe inventor skill, let's say, to turn your seismic 1 from +1 to +5. Or you could add a secondary option like you've got for forging the, I think it's Dragon Plate, as well as the Corbel Beast Shields. Because that's got a monetary form of actually making it. You could add something like that to the combination of the seismic ones to make a +5, for example. I can't remember how much it is for the spirit shields, or a mil, something like that, to put it together. 3 mil? I have no idea. But yeah, because it's a seismic wand and you're going for like +1, the +1 stage might cost you, I don't know, 15 mil to actually just forge it into a +1. Then the +2 would be 30 mil. And a +3 would be 60 mil, and a +4 would be 120 mil, and just chuck it up in stages. And when it gets to like the really high tier, let's say +5 is the highest, then maybe +4 would be something along the lines of 300 mil to make, and a +5 would be 800 mil to turn it into a +5 without the skill level requirement. You know? Or another one, you could change it up a bit, so if you do have the skill requirement, give it a chance to fail. This is something that isn't in RuneScape other than on like agility. I mean, you do smithing, you're guaranteed to smith it every single time. You do mining, well, you mine eventually. That's probably a really, really, really shitty example there. Let's ignore I said mining. I didn't say mining, never happened. What I did say was fletching. And fletching, same thing, you're guaranteed to make a bow every single time. There's no failures or anything like that. So when you come to reforging weapons into each other to make plus versions, maybe there's a chance to fail if you reforge it yourself, and maybe there's a chance to lose one of the ingredients. Yeah, I mean, yeah, fair enough, it'll be really shitty you lose like a weapon at high grade, but if you had all of this in the game, it would give you so much more to do at endgame. I mean, you could add it at all stages of the game. Not just literally like the only endgame stuff can have this Uber mode just to make the high levels immensely powerful. You could have it throughout the level range. So Chaotix, for example, if you really love Dungeoneering, you can bang out 200 mil Dungeoneer XP, and you can spend all those tokens on buying Chaotic Claws. And you can turn those Chaotic Claws into +10s. And go crazy with slicing people up, like Freddy Krueger or something. Entirely up to you. Something like that can be done. Not a problem. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Endgame stuff can be changed entirely. Other examples, you did have the rebirth system from something like Conquer Online. They did talk about that before. It was similar-ish to the Prestige thing, although apparently not many people were a big fan of it. Although in Conquer Online, to be fair, it was fucking great. Although if you was a new player and you joined the game and you went into a PvP area, you was completely fucked. But other than that, awesome. It was an awesome little addition to it. It's something you don't really see all that often. Although, tell a lie, Perfect World International is another MMO I've played. Just recently they've added a rebirth system which has changed it ever so slightly, which has made it makes you massively powerful, and it's quite interesting going through because they give you like triple XP for the first rebirth and then quadruple for the second, and each time the XP between getting the levels doubles, so it takes you a monstrous amount more XP. But because you get the ×3 and the ×4, it doesn't seem like it. In fact, it may be slightly quicker than leveling up through the first time, because you've already got all the gear and stuff. But yeah, that kind of thing, that's also in there. I mean, other stuff, I can take an example from Final Fantasy 11 here. They've got so much endgame on that game, it's unbelievable. It's been around pretty much as long as WoW, and it's still going, well, not as strong as WoW, but it's still pretty damn good. I play it on and off now and then. And they've got a thing in there called Dynamis. Weird thing to explain, but imagine Edgeville prior to doing While Gothic Sleeps, I think it is, or is it Ritual of the Marjorie? Prior to one of those, Ritual of the Marjorie, I think, where it wasn't on fire and broken down and battered. Well, you take that, for this example, let's say Varrock. You take Varrock as it is now, and you go through a series of quests / missions / pre-requirements or whatever, and eventually you can enter, let's call it Dark World, or Dark Gillinor, whatever. And as soon as you zone into Dark Gillinor, you're in Varrock and you're limited to Varrock only. But inside Varrock there are no NPCs, the entire city has basically been ripped apart, there's like parts of buildings everywhere, everything's on fire, everything's nice and evil and creepy, good times. And then the entirety of the area is filled with hard monsters. Like, let's not even call them basic monsters. It's filled with bosses. Like boss level monsters all across the place. So it's full of Gradors, for example, and they're like the basic mobs. Grador is your basic enemy in that area. Yeah, sounds pretty interesting so far. But to make it a bit more difficult, the way Dynamis works on Final Fantasy 11, there's actually a time limit in there. You start off, you only have 30 minutes inside, but there's special monsters in there, which if you manage to kill them, will increase your time limit by 30 minutes each, and there's like 4 of them, or something like that. So all in all, you gain about 3 hours within this city. Well, you can do the same in RuneScape, I guess. And basically, the idea of it is each of these will drop some super gear. So different Dynamises or different Dark Gillinors will drop skill-specific gear. So for melee, for example, you could have, let's say Varrock is like the melee Dark Gillinor. All the monsters in there are Gradors for the most part. There's a mega boss in there, and let's call it a melee version of Nex. Something along those lines. Like a Mega Ramen or Doom. We'll have one of those in there. He's the mega boss, like the really hard bastard where you need a massive group of people to take him down. But all throughout it, they can all drop like specific Uber weapons, Dark Gillinor weapons. Could be the new 95 weapons, whatever you want to call it, either way. But they can drop that kind of stuff. And, well, same thing again. You go in there, they're hard to fight, so you've got to farm all of them. And on top of that, you go for the Mega Boss, which drops some super melee specific odd pieces, so like the cape, your boots, your gloves, your rings, your necklaces, the Porden slot, I can't remember what it's called, that kind of thing. So, yeah, more endgame stuff. There's so many things you can add to RuneScape, well, literally just to endgame. But anyway, enough rambling on. This bloke was talking about XP and things like that. Well, I completely agree with him on the XP part. I can totally understand it from RuneScape's part as well. I'm assuming the way RuneScape is looking at it, because this is what tends to happen where old MMOs start to get a bit low on the subscriber, not at the cap like they used to be. They make XP, or old MMOs I should say, basically they make XP a bit easier to come by. And the reason for that is, when MMOs have been around for a long time, the sheer amount of content in the game is monstrous. I mean, if you started playing an MMO that literally just came out, there would be a relatively small amount of content within that game. But if you was to go back to it 10 years later, a perfect example, if anyone has played WoW when it first came out, if you imagine WoW when it first came out right now, and then compare it to WoW at this second, after, I don't know how many expansions it had, like 12, 14, 27, something like that. So yeah, that should give you a pretty good idea of it. Shut up, antivirus. But it's that kind of thing. The reason why they've changed the XP, I think, is simply because if they make XP easier to get for newer players, then it allows new players to actually get up to kind of the same stage where everyone else seems to be in the game. After this game has been out for so long, I dare say the average player at this point has got maybe 6 99s, possibly 3 99s. Let's say the average player across the board, if you compare top to bottom, would work out at something like at least 199 at the very least. So the standard compared to, let's say, 5 years ago is quite a lot higher. 5 years ago, the high tier players would have 199, for example. If you go back something like 8 or 9 years ago, the average player was around combat level 90. If that. It was like, average level would be about combat level 80, and back then it was the 126 format. So it was way before summoning and all the rest of that crap came along, and the 200 and all that bullshit. But XP has become a lot easier to get hold of. I'm not gonna lie, XP is an absolute piss take these days. I mean, combat wise, it would have taken you goddamn ages to hit a 99 back then. I'm not gonna lie, it literally did take quite a long ass time. And now, I mean, look at what I did on the MCFS. I mean, 5 days was it? And I took runecrafting from 1 to 91. Yeah, not really that hard compared to the fact that if you take away runespan, you drop the XP per hour down to like 30k on average, and that's after you hit nats, which means you've got to get up to 44 first, and at that point it's like 10 XP, not 10k XP an hour, which is really, really horrifically crap. That's the difference between now and back in the day XP wise. It's the easiest way I can explain it. But the reason RuneScape's doing it is simply to allow new players to actually not feel like there's absolutely no chance I'm ever going to be able to play this game at endgame or be decent. Like, everyone seems to have a skill cape walking around. Everyone's got at least 199. I feel like I'm completely not a tard. It's also taken me ages to do it. There's like no. It helps prevent them from looking like there's absolutely no new players to the game. But at the same time, the problem with that is making all this XP readily available is the average player will also level up equally as fast as any new players. But it becomes even more stark compared to before. If the average player before all this XP nonsense, let's say, had 199, and you was a new player and the average player was 199, fair enough, you could probably reach it and it wouldn't be too bad. But then you raise the XP up, and fair enough, this brand new player can now get a 99 relatively quickly. The average player that used to have only 199 now has 7. And all the other people who were average players who only had 199 also have 7. And now just having 199 becomes the standard for noob. You know? Goes a bit bonkers. On top of that, I perfectly agree with him when he's on about adding all these double XPs and stuff. Now you may think, Salmon, you're maxed. You'd obviously say that because you're maxed. I mean, I'm a noob, I haven't got any levels, blah 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 blah. Honestly, mate, I started MCFS, and within, well, before a month is over, I've already got 1,200 and something total. I'm not really struggling at all. I mean, honestly, I'm not even playing all that much. Leveling up is easy. Like, monstrously easy. And considering this game is, at the moment at least, entirely focused on XP, making it quick to get to the end game content, or maxing, doesn't bode well for the future. So you need to add more end game. I agree with Drumgun. I've got to be totally honest. For the most part, I agree. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. 44 minutes. Fuck me. Been chatting shit for ages. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, endgame wise, there's so much stuff they can add to RuneScape to improve what you can actually do at endgame. I mean, that is the entire reason I started MCFS. Is literally, I got max on Salmon, and at the time couldn't really be asked to get comp because, I mean, Livid Farm and Dungeon Ewan, neither are particularly wonderful for me. But there was, if I get comp, Chimmed comp, I'm looking at a year or more probably to get that, I would expect. And that'll literally just be sitting there doing castle wars for the most part, which isn't enjoyable. So yeah, other than that, I've got no interest in getting 200 mil, and I suppose I could go for armors and weapons and stuff, but you can only do so much of that before you want to rip your eyes out. Meh, MCFS. Because there's no endgame. If there was stuff where you could just go around poking stuff in the eye, and it was more than you get the item job done, then yeah, fair enough. Because I mean, at the moment, instead of going to actually kill all the bosses, I could just walk around killing weaker stuff, make a bollock ton of money, and buy those weapons. And I've done my endgame. And the only reason I say that is because Virago and stuff takes a group of people. I don't know a group of people. So I'm on my dug. So the easiest method for me is literally just make some dollar and job done. Yeah, there we go. I think that'll cover it. I thought it was interesting to talk about anyway, so I thought I'd chuck it up. I just randomly come across this on a forum. I have no idea what I just said for the past 46 minutes. 46 minutes? Come on, Sam, it's alright. But yeah, I think they do need to add some endgame stuff. I mean, the 120 skill cape is a good thing to add. I mean, I'm assuming this is probably the counter to the prestige system they was talking about adding a while back, if you can remember that. I'm assuming this was the counter to it. And on top of that, everyone for the past fuck knows how long has always been saying, where's the 120 skills? Level up to level 120. Move all skills to 120. I need 120! This is probably just a cater to that. But it is more endgame stuff. And hopefully those smithing updates they mentioned in RuneFest as well as in Vendor, and hopefully some extra stuff maybe we haven't even heard of yet, or something similar to what I mentioned earlier with the augments and that kind of thing. Something like that will be added. That would be lovely. It would give me more stuff to do, and I would jump back on Salmon and I'd have something to do other than just comp and trip. Ugh. Anyway, I'll leave you all to it then. This is 47 minutes worth of babbling nonsense. I thought it was interesting. I hope you found it interesting as well. And yeah, until next time, people, I will catch you all later. Have a good one.